Okay, so again, thanks again, and yes, from Rick Goins, he does send his apologies for not being able to make it this afternoon. So he just wanted me to do a quick overview of the region, and then I'll dive into the training and exercise portion. So just really quick, how's my audio? Is it okay?
Yeah, Steve, it sounds good.
Okay, great, thank you. And then if you have questions along the way, please feel free to chat them in or raise them. And there's about half of the office is actually on this call, so they'd be able to jump in to support the questions and answers. So moving forward, so again, we're from the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA Region 7. And like I said, I'll provide a quick overview of the region and then do a deep dive into training and exercises. All right, so the kind of the four mediums that are our area of responsibility. We have the Federal Protection Network, Federal Network Protection, I'm sorry, cyber, infrastructure resilience, and that's probably the touch point that you are most familiar with working with the protective security advisors out in the field, and then our emergency communications. And I won't steal too much thunder from a couple of our guest speakers that will join me in this conversation, but that's kind of the space that we operate in. And just like you in your organizations, you have your vision and your mission. So for us, if we're focused on securing and ensuring a resilient infrastructure for the American people, so if we wake up every morning and that's our focus, then we're on the right page. And then if we're doing everything right, we're leading the nation's efforts to understanding and managing risk to our critical infrastructure. So if we're marching to that rhythm, then we're on the right path, and that's where we kind of partner with you and create value for our community and for the nation. So this slide, it's always shocking because it's in bright red. Understanding today's risk landscape, and this is one that your group in particular. I'm preaching to the choir on this as far as what the risk landscape looks like. But when I presented this picture, pandemics was always something that I never really had a personal experience in. With Ebola, I wasn't involved in that. But now we're all in this together with COVID-19. So I think looking at this deck, I think we have a full house as far as everybody's experience now with some level experience with each one of these. So so having that understanding that risk landscape, integrating that into our preparedness planning looks a lot different today. Much more different than it did even in January of this year. So who we are. So like I said, we operate in those four different areas of responsibility there that are highlighted in those different colors. But if we're doing everything right, and this is how you can judge us, if we're interacting with the public sector, the private sector, governments, both state and local, and we're developing relationships with you, establishing that trust, and we're pushing those messages of preparedness, and we're listening to you to get your feedback, then we're doing everything right. If we're stovepiped into one sector, into one threat, then we need to be checked. So definitely keep us honest there, and we as a organization, we try to make sure that we're doing all of that. So that's how we're, again, creating value for you, being a good partner to you. kind of the not even the 30,000 foot look, but the 50,000 foot look. This is how we're organized at our headquarters, and I won't spend too much time here, but as you can see, the organization is organized to support each one of those different areas of responsibility. The only thing to kind of take away from this picture is this is where we get our strategy. This is where we get our budget. This is where we get kind of our higher level objectives. So, but like I said, that's kind of top level. Here's where the rubber meets the road. Here's where we have touch points with you, and many of you already have relationships with our field staff, our field operators, whether they're protective security advisors, chemical inspectors, our cyber team, and our emergency communications professional here, Jim Lundstedt, who's on the call. So, like I said, this is where we operate. We don't have that Washington perspective. We have a local perspective, a Region 7 perspective. So we live here. We're in the community, and you can see the 4 states that overlap with FEMA's Region 7. So no change there. And then we overlap with the 9 tribal nations that are within that 4-state region. On a normal basis, on an everyday basis, our office is off of Ward Parkway in Kansas City, just to the north of Rockhurst High School. So if you're familiar with that area, that's where we are. There's a medium-sized federal building there that we've just moved into last year. But just like you and just like you, we're operating out of our living rooms. All right, so I'm going to start the kind of the training and exercise portion of this discussion, and then I'll transition. I'll pass it off to another one of my colleagues, Dahlia Lewis, who will cover kind of the chemical program, and then finally Jeff Genista, who will talk cyber. So training and exercises. I want to start off briefly with kind of a case study or best practice or kind of our program in action here. So back in, it seems like forever, February of 2018, I was attending the Mid-America Regional Council's training and exercise program workshop. And during that workshop, the Wyandotte County emergency manager mentioned that he had an open requirement for an exercise, for full-scale exercise in particular. He had that open need. So I approached him and started a conversation with him on understanding what that need was, and trying to see if there was a touch point that we can support him with. It turned out, after a couple conversations, that there indeed was a touch point, and so we put together a request, and that request was for a full scale. And you know as much as I do how much time and effort and money goes into one of those things. So it's not an easy lift. So getting the resources to carry that out, is kind of a big deal. So we put that request in, we got that approved, and like I said, taking a system approach to integrating our products into your needs is the way to go. And this is how it played out. We got that full scale approved, and kind of with that came a tabletop exercise. So we took a building block approach. We conducted that tabletop exercise with Sporting KC over at Children's Mercy Park. It was a kind of a complex coordinated terrorist attack scenario. So that was conducted back in October, kind of building upon that theme and that goodwill that we had going, especially with stadium security. We were able to host a stadium security symposium. That was in the November time frame, and that was at Arrowhead Stadium. And that was a national audience. So we invited folks from all levels of stadiums, whether they were collegiate, semi-professional, amateur, and then of course our professional leagues. So that was an all-day event. Like I said, we're not just cherry picking things. This was a kind of a concerted effort that developed. So moving on to January of 2020, we were through that network, through those conversations that were organically happening, we identified a need for a Counter-IED course. So we were able to deliver that back in January, again, hosted by Sporting KC in partnership with the Legends shopping mall. We did a course and a practical exercise at the mall. And then we're still on track to deliver that full-scale exercise in October of 2020. We're flexing just like everybody else is with the environment, and we're still waiting on feedback from MLS, Major League Soccer, on what the schedule is going to look like. But that is an event that we're scheduled for, like I said, October over at Children's Mercy Park, and that's going to be a full-scale version of what we did the tabletop on. So just kind of imprint this on your brains as we move along this presentation. Again, kind of foot stomping the system wide approach and not foot stomping the a la carte ordering of different products, and that'll make more sense as we develop this conversation. So quick overview of the discussion points here. Talk to you about an integrated preparedness plan, and then I'm going to highlight a couple of training products that we have, and highlight a couple of exercise programs that we either run or partner in. So this graphic, that colorful graphic, that was lifted out of the new doctrine version of the Homeland Security Exercise Evaluation Program that just came out in January. So the new HCEP doctrine. So they're really pushing that integrated approach to everything now, and I think it was always understood, but now it's being more directed here. So the whole takeaway here is I overlaid our training products and exercise products into this continuum to let you know where we fit in. So if you're running your own continuum with your jurisdiction or with your organization, this is where we overlap with training and exercises. So we have a number of, we have a full suite of Counter-IED courses, active shooter workshops, and then on the exercise side, a couple of different options there, both kind of self-service and then those that are kind of a full service version. So I'll dive into those in the next couple of slides. So on the training side, so Counter-IED, our most requested, most popular are these instructor-led courses. There's 6 in total, and I'll go into what those are, but that's kind of the top level geared towards professionals just like you gathered on this call. Probably not for the layperson. This is for the security professional, with the exception of that one course there that has a max capacity of 250. These are geared towards security professionals, law enforcement, first responders. The next 2, the virtual and the independent study, just as they're described. The virtual one is a live instructor conducting a course. Again, probably geared more towards your security professional, but more there's some room there for the layperson to attend. And then the independent study is everybody, everybody that whether they're your business partner or a security professional, these are applicable to them. And I'll do a little bit deeper dive on the next slides on what those courses look like. But the active shooter training programs that we have, so our protective security advisors, they have a workshop that they can do, on demand, as scheduled, tailored to your audience, tailored to your needs, and it's probably one of their most frequently requested activities. And you work with them directly. And like I said, Rick Goins is your point person for Missouri. And if you're on the Kansas side, Chuck Lanahan is your point person. And I'll be able to give you those contact informations either at the end of this briefing or in the chat if you don't already have a relationship with them. So like I said, those are one version. Then we have a second version, an active shooter workshop, not as readily available, pretty limited availability, but these are focused primarily on emergency action plan development. So at the end of this 8-hour, one-day workshop, you walk away with a shell that you can further develop your EAP. If you don't have one, or refine the one that you do have. These are, we only get 4 per region, so we get 4 on an annual basis, and we look to deliver these, like I said, annually. What we ask is about 2 per organization should come, because they're limited to about 150. So we want to get as much as much participation as possible from a wide audience. So you wouldn't necessarily show up with 15 people from your security team. Just 1 or 2 there have a responsibility in EAP development. All right, so doing a deeper dive into these courses, and just so you know, I will send you flyers that are associated with each one of these things, with links and registration information. I just didn't want to bog down the slide with all of that. It's already pretty busy enough. But like I said, these instructor-led courses are one-day courses. We bring a team out and they spend 3 days, Tuesday through Thursday, delivering these courses. So you would request these courses in 3-day blocks. The only one that second from the last, surveillance detection, that itself is a 3-day course. So when you're requesting these are done in blocks of 3, with the exception of that one. That's the only standalone. So kind of going back to that image that I brought up at the beginning, it's best that these are planned as part of your program, as part of your outlook for a year or even longer. Cherry picking these makes it a little bit more random, but look to integrate these into your overall picture, just the same way that Wyandotte County did with their programs there. So while we can absolutely do kind of a standalone, hey, I just need a course just to get a couple folks developed. Absolutely, let's talk and let's do that. But for the most part, let's look at a systematic approach to this. The only footnote here to add is right now these courses they're all canceled through June, with the exception of I think 1 course that is going next month. So this right now these are hard to come by because of the environment that we're in. The direction that I just got yesterday was these can be requested. There's going to be a lot of questions asked, so there has to be an operational need. There has to be approvals that one, your state is open, your jurisdiction is open for gatherings, and there has to be, like I said, that operational need. So these are, while they're kind of the crown jewel of our training programs, they're unfortunately they're hard to come by right now because of the COVID situation. But like I said, there are workarounds if there's an operational need. So on the flip side, and the good news is we have these virtual classes, and this kind of fills that gap there. So these are courses that are delivered with a live instructor that are interactive with you. So you can't just log in, walk away, and come back when an hour's over. No, this is interaction with an instructor. These are about an hour to hour and a half. Schedule is published monthly. Like I said, there's a 50 max capacity. And this isn't 50 from your organization. This is 50 people that register. So you can register yourself and a couple of others and attend together, or you can just do it individually. But you're not responsible for filling 50 seats. There's just a limit to the bandwidth there. So these courses, like I said, these are for security professionals, and some leeway for the layperson, your business partners, but primarily your security professionals. And then finally, this one, the independent study, like I said, computer-based training, always available 24/7, wide availability, and wide audience. So these are for all of the above: business partners, yourselves, and security professionals, but more at the awareness level and not in the practical or management level of security. So that's our training programs. Like I said, just foot stomping that systematic approach to these. Your point person for these is your protective security advisor. I work closely with them in coordinating these courses for delivery to you. Next is our exercise program. I'm going to talk about 4 different flavors, 4 different levels. That first level, Critical Infrastructure Tabletop Exercise Program, or CITEPs. We have our exercise design assistants kind of at the regional level, and that's with me specifically. And then we have headquarters support on those complex tabletops, and then with the VTTX program. So the CITEPs, these are exercises in a box. This gives the user the opportunity to deliver an exercise without starting from a blank sheet of paper. So all materials are provided: planning guidance, situation manuals, slides, kind of fill in the blanks on names and times and all that stuff. But these are all available 24/7 on HISN Connect, as long as you're part of that HISN, and then the critical infrastructure community of interest. You will have access to those exercises, and there's 50 different scenarios, all organized by critical infrastructure sector. Anything from severe weather to active shooter, to just different failures, and that's what the scenarios are built off of, and they're for you to tailor to your needs. And this is delivering exercises at scale, so there's no limit to what these are available to you at. The other piece here is the piece to underscore here is they're yours to tailor to your specific needs. This next level, this exercise design assistance, this is coordinated with your PSA, and they work with organizations, jurisdictions, and they bring me in to kind of facilitate or advise on exercises, and multiple ways that we can help out here. We can help you work on your integrated preparedness plan, your what used to be called the training and exercise plan under the old HCEP, now the IPP. Help you kind of forecast that out. We can help with managing an exercise project from start to finish, whether you need us to be that exercise planning lead or partner with your exercise planning lead that may need some assistance with this program. But we can absolutely do that. That's probably the ideal place to be. And then kind of more on the full service side, we can be the planning lead, design it and facilitate it. While that's has a lot more hands-on from us, it's a lot more effort on our part. We still ask for your partnership in this, so that that there's skin in the game, and that there's learning that's happening, so that that's not always the place that you're in, but that's absolutely available. And just so you know, it takes about 90 days from start to finish on one of these exercises, and that's from the initial planning meeting to exercise conduct, and then obviously after actions, another 30 on top of that. So just for your reference there. Next level, and we're almost done here, is the kind of the complex exercise support. And this is where we get headquarters support. When you have a special event, large scale event, this is where, or something that's very complex, we will request the support of headquarters to come out and assist us with this. And like I said, these are complex scenarios or operational exercises. So your drills, functionals, and full scales. So they bring out a team. They have a full staff of about 20 planners and stuff like that. So we're able to do a lot more, as you would expect, very limited to special events. So we've actually been able to get some support from headquarters on these types of exercises in our region. Like I said, supporting KC, a couple of universities. We were able to do a series of exercises back in 2018. So very manageable, very doable. That request just has to be very specific. So the competition for these is pretty high, but can happen. And one thing to note here, this is full service. From start to finish, everything is provided. Sitmans, facilitators, and everything. So it's a good deal. And then finally, I brought this into the discussion. While this isn't our product, this is an excellent product. Virtual tabletop exercises brought to you by FEMA, our partners here. And these are all virtually delivered. Only caveat is they're VTC only, so they're not webinar. So they require a VTC system, and you still kind of have to be in the same room together as a group. So you'd have to manage that. But these are delivered to 10 to 15 different sites, not people, but sites. So you could join one of these VTCs with 10 other sites across the country. They are come as you are, no planning required. They do everything. They send you the sitmans. You identify a facilitator on your side, and then they facilitate the entire thing virtually or via VTC from EMI, for those that are familiar with EMI back there in Maryland. Like I said, the good thing is it's very little prep required, but there are some technical requirements there that make it a little bit difficult. But excellent, especially in this environment where we're limited in kind of that face-to-face contact. So that's my programs as they support your preparedness cycle. So look for us in partnering in that with you, and don't hesitate to reach out to your PSAs and inquire about these, and then I can do a deep dive with you on the specifics. But that's our program in a nutshell. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it back. And we should have Dahlia Lewis coming in next.
Dahlia, are you still there? Are you here? Is anyone on?
I can hear you, Rick.
Yes, we can hear.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good to go.
I'll contact Dahlia on my mobile device and see.
Jeff, are you on?
Yeah, I'm sitting here, and Steve, if you want, I can kind of jump in up in front of her while you figure out with Dahlia.
Let's do that.
Okay. So I can go ahead and share my screen if that's okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
Are we?
Go ahead, Jeff. I see you pulled his board.
I have your board too. So do you want?
Yeah, excellent. All right, thank you, everyone. I apologize for that technical difficulty. All right, great. And I should be able to advance. Okay, thank you. Everyone can hear me now. Thank you. I appreciate you, Steve, for bringing on the organizational overview and speaking to your training and exercise portion. I do miss seeing you in the office, so it's great that we can collaborate together. And I just wanted to take a few minutes with everyone today to follow on with what I specifically do inside of CISA in Region 7 with the Chemical Facility Anti-Terrorism Standards, the CFATS program. My name is Dahlia Lewis, and I'm a Senior Chemical Security Inspector assigned to the Region 7 office there in Kansas City. And there we go. I'm sorry, Rick, I clicked the wrong one. I wanted to talk to you all a little bit about our CFATS regulation in the sense of, as being a chemical security inspector, I am under the more of the regulatory portion of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, specifically in the infrastructure security compliance arena. And the CFATS regulation helps us ensure that chemicals that possess at or above a screening threshold quantity, certain chemicals, that they register and report their holdings to the department, so we can understand exactly what they have, where they're located, and what type of risks does that involve around the surrounding area. There we go. A lot of times we have been able to historically work with and investigate and find out which facilities possess these chemicals. And these facilities can range anything from, you think of big pharma, you're going to think of perhaps agricultural, different industries that you're going to immediately think, okay, yes, they have chemicals, all the way down to perhaps an individual who, use an example of nitromethane, they basically do hobby racing, perhaps on the weekend, and they have a drum or drums of nitromethane there at the residence, which they use to work their hobby. So in that, when we use that term facilities, it can range from anything that, it's more of a non-traditional part. We have a lot of facilities that lie in the chemical sector, but the CFATS program reaches across all sectors. And that just goes back to that principle of if you have or possess those chemicals at that screening threshold quantity that you register and report. And essentially what this slide here is demonstrating is that submission, that reporting of your chemicals of interest to the department. And you're basically letting us know what you have at what quantities, and you work through this process. And the tiering methodology that we possess is applied to understand your chemical, the amount, and essentially the consequences, risk, and vulnerabilities of where it is specifically located. Once that tiering methodology, that algorithm basically is applied, there's an outcome. You're either going to be tiered or you're going to be untiered. If you are tiered, you're considered to be high risk, and you will continue moving through the process and begin to work with us on developing and working on a site security plan. If you are not tiered, that's great. You're considered to not be high risk. You're unregulated. However, it still applies that you need to keep us informed of whether you increase or decrease those holdings in the future. So it's just not like a register and, you know, I got my untiered letter and I'm just going to move on. And this is, I would call it like a live process as you work through this part with us. Our chemical security inspectors will work with a facility with the POC at every point through this process and help the facility with any questions. Perhaps it's an on-site visit. And essentially, if you know, unlike us, perhaps in this setting, that we have the background and experience to work through what does my security plan mean, the chemical security inspector will help the facility develop and understand what securing those chemicals look like at that specific location for that facility. And throughout the process, once you're tiered, you will continue to have us verify that you are implementing that site security plan throughout your tenure with us, and we're going to make sure that you're going to stay in compliance. And we essentially help these facilities by understanding what their risk-based performance standards are that they can implement there at the facility. A lot of I'd say a lot of us are familiar. We always think security, maybe it's you know, cybersecurity, physical security. That we have both of those elements, and the unique process that this is implemented with our program is that we take a holistic approach. We're not just going to say, you know, gate guns and guards and, you know, lock it up and it's secured. The joke is once you've been to one CFATS facility, you've been to one CFATS facility. We're going to work on in our non-prescriptive regulatory program, this approach, and holistically help a facility understand what does this mean for them at this location. And we do this through 18 risk-based performance standards. And as you can see here, we're going to take the gamut from 1 through 18, and each one of these can be its own conversation and its own discussion in that. And that's I would say the benefit of having our chemical security inspectors and that experience in working with the facility to help them consider what does this mean here for you, and also providing them, you know, options for consideration, and also letting them know that, you know, no, this isn't going to work, or have you considered this, to help them achieve those requirements, those elements of the risk-based performance standards. So it's kind of that oxymoron we're thinking of, non-prescriptive regulatory, but in that it essentially is. And we're looking at that holistic aspect of ensuring that we help the nation's high-risk chemical facilities develop a viable and an appropriate site security plan. this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Throughout the nation, since our inception of the program, we've conducted many compliance inspections. We have approved multiple site security plans across the board. And so this essentially just kind of a good overview from 2008 up until now. And again, back to that earlier chevron, the area moving left to right, just to highlight this again, facilities can to enter and exit our program. You know, maybe you possess chemicals seasonally and you use them up in processing or et cetera, and then you don't possess them the rest of the year. The facility can work to extricate itself or let us know that they need a redetermination, and they will exit the program. And then when they come back later in the season, you know, or the next year, whatever that operational footprint looks like, they'll register and report again and work their way through the process. Some facilities do this. Other facilities take a year-round approach, and they keep the highest quantities on hand, so they don't have to do that level of effort. So in that, that's a lot of the flexibilities that we will offer our stakeholders in their supporting their participation in that requirement to be successful. Throughout the nation, we've had over 40,000 top screens filed to date. Currently, there are roughly 3,300 facilities that are currently regulated in that tiers of high risk of 1 through 4. And in Region 7, our covered, our tiered population is currently at 209. In our regional office snapshot, myself and Rodney Lockett, who is the Chief of Regulatory Compliance, we work directly in the regional office here in Kansas City. And we have additional chemical security inspectors in our region that go out and support the CFATS life cycle with the facilities, whether it's understanding how to register and report through authorization inspections, and then of course the continued compliance inspections. And currently, I think maybe the main highlight as we're doing this via Zoom, this is probably my second interaction with it, so I appreciate everyone's patience. I do want to let you all know that we do have all of our facilities, we are not directly interfacing with them physically at this point. We have sent out multiple messages throughout our chemical security assessment tool with our regulated population to let them know that, you know, just because of the pandemic, it does not alleviate the obligation and the requirement to continue to protect and secure their chemicals of interest. If they need any support or questions, etc., we have that communication with them, and then also through our CFATS help desk. The first link here is a great resource that has that current message and some of the letters from our Director for Infrastructure Security, annotating this and letting them know that we are still here, and we will continue to work with them as situations evolve state by state, etc. Additionally, in there, we have also published with CISA understanding what does, you know, besides chemical facility anti-terrorism, what is critical infrastructure, and also what's going on with the coronavirus. And again, there's another great resource here with the ways to look at COVID-19 and some of the disinformation and strategies that we can help to promote accurate information and appropriate sources. Moving forward, if there's any other information that you would like to look to or reach out for a further conversation, please feel free to do so, to reach out to us. We are wanting to ensure that we continue to communicate and talk about our programs in CISA. And A lot of these fact sheets are on the CFATS Knowledge Center, and we want to continue to leverage our stakeholders and different communities of interest to help be our force multiplier, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And again, we're here to support. Additionally, further resources that we have available for outreach, or if you'd like a specific more in-depth or a different type of presentation, please feel free to reach out to myself, Steve, the Region 7 office, and we can work to understand what you're looking for and how we can support that. Again, I'm going to end here. We all know that with us, especially in our direct community and with what we do, security starts with us. It's similar, almost like safety. It's usually something you take home versus, you know, taking to work. A lot of times we're in that similar role and that balance. But again, another plug with some of our other resources and tools available with the department, and to keep that fresh. Even though we all have sometimes our niche areas, remember it all starts with us, and to be part of that larger set of seeing something and seeing something. Again, I want to thank everyone for their time, and we'll make sure that we have our contact information promulgated. Okay, with you all. I did see, I was going to say, I'll take a quick question, so I leave Jeff some time. And I see Sam had a question. Okay, Sam, that's a great question. He's basically kind of wondering about the amount of ESS that might be required, electronic security at a chemical facility. And in that, in a CFATS, that's situationally dependent, because we know right now electronic security would be a plus in a pandemic environment if you went to remote off-location services, or it's not needed when you're 24/7 and you have direct monitoring and detection through operational personnel and procedures. So that's kind of a back to that benefit I was talking about of our program, is that it can be a complement. It can be your sole source of monitoring and detection for that, and enunciating that there's perhaps there's an alarm, there's an issue, and you may not have to have one. So it's situationally dependent, and it can be used to provide that level of detection at the facility. Are there any other questions from the audience prior to moving forward? Sure.
Okay, Dahlia, you all done for the moment?
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that, Sam, and I hope I answered your question. And if there's anything else, feel free, we can reach out and have a further discussion offline. I want to thank again the chapter and everyone for letting us support, and then also get us in contact and communication. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. While I work on getting control of the screen, I am Jeff Junista. I'm a cybersecurity advisor assigned to Region 7 again, which is Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and Kansas. What we're going to do is kind of discuss cyber essentials and how DHS is approaching those partnerships with you all as our critical infrastructure providers, and where you might be able to start if you hadn't thought about it. And hopefully going forward, I'll get invited out. We can have a meeting. We can discuss your challenges as business owners and operators in the critical infrastructure piece. As soon as I get control, or I can just go straight to a screen share.
Yeah, you have control.
Where am I at?
Yeah, just a little bit down. Keep it going down. More.
Yeah, it's slow. Sorry, folks.
There.
Okay, so CISA takes a risk management approach to both physical and cyber importance to your organization. And what that means is you as a business owner or an operator need to sit down and think about all the threats to your organization. What are the vulnerabilities that you have, whether it's no locked doors or wide open internet access to your customers? And then what are the consequences to your organization? And what we mean by consequences is, could you have a financial hit? Could you be the cause of an environmental accident? You know, what's the hit going to be to your reputation? Are you regulated? Are there going to be compliance issues? Or even perhaps your credit? So that all of this needs to get taken into account. And again, with the protective security advisors and the cybersecurity advisors, we all, along with the headquarters team, can all work to help develop that process for you if you need to. From a cyber perspective, my assessments are aligned with the NIST cybersecurity framework. It asks every organization to primarily do 5 things. One is, have you identified your assets? Can you protect those assets? How do you detect an issue on your networks or your control systems? What's your response to those issues look like, and how or what is your plan for recovering those systems should something go bad, whether it's malware, you could have equipment failure, take your pick. We can all imagine what's going on. So let's start with yourself. A culture of cyber readiness has to start at the top. This isn't a bottom-up approach. So it takes the leadership to sit here and say, we're going to get cyber smart in our organization, because technology can only go so far to protect your organization. Your biggest challenge, quite honestly, is your everyday users and your customers that rely on your network. If a staff member clicks on the wrong email, suddenly you've got malware or ransomware. If a administrator does the wrong thing, they could destroy your entire database, whatever that looks like. But drive that culture from the top down. Secondly, if you are in a type organization, what I mean by type is you're in the energy sector. Go make friends with other people in the energy sector. They have similar businesses. You may need them on some bad day to help out. Invite us, CISA, in for briefings. Build those partnerships. We've got a really good FBI cyber team that would love to come out and visit with you. Just so that you kind of know who we are and what resources we can provide if you start having a bad day. And it's a whole lot easier to know who we are ahead of time than to come into work and have that big black Suburban show up. And lastly, most businesses consider cyber as an expense. And we're asking you to consider it a business risk and a business enabler. So those are things you can do yourself. From your systems, whoops, it jumped. From your systems, where the first thing we asked you to do is identify things. What is on your network? What systems, what software, what technology, and what data or information rides across your networks? Do you have secure configuration so that everything is standardized? We find that being a big challenge, because if you don't know what right looks like, how are you going to know what wrong looks like? And all it takes is a misconfigured piece of hardware or software to allow an attacker to get into your networks. If you have unsupported or outdated end-of-life type equipment, get it off your network, disconnect it somehow. whatever that looks like, because those are full of vulnerabilities. When we talk about the email and web browsers, it's simple things like disable hyperlinks so your staff can't click on those links that they suddenly got in the I love you email. And then decide, what does your staff need to really be doing? Do they need to be going to Facebook during the day? Do they need to be on eBay? You spent a lot of money on your networks. Just think about what you want your employees to do. Lock that down, and that way if they were to click on that email or whatever, those particular applications won't have the rights to leave your network because it's not allowed. Your surroundings. This could be your partner companies that you work with. This could be your staff, but you need to learn who's doing what on your network. Hopefully by now you've heard of multi-factor authentication. This is where you would basically log in and your phone might give you a PIN code, or you're using some kind of an access card with a PIN number. Multi-factor means something you know, something you have. Restrict admin privileges. The biggest issue I run into is everybody's got admin rights to their computer, and they don't need to have that, because if you're operating your computer as an admin, the minute you click on something, you just gave that bad malware or that ransomware admin privileges because it's based on your login. Again, hopefully you have IT policies, procedures, and everybody's using unique passwords. You're not sharing a user account, in other words. Your data. Do you know what data you have? You've probably heard of the GDPR over in Europe. California is locking it down. You may be restricted to personally identifiable information, or PII. You may be subject to HIPAA data because of your HR department. Things to think about. How are you protecting that data? Do you have antivirus, anti-malware loaded on all of your servers and on the workstations? And then lastly, back up everything important to you. I mean, CISA doesn't know what's important to you, which is why we ask those questions right up front under, have you identified what's important? Lastly, think about what you would do for an incident response. Typically, the FBI or us, we respond to a cyber incident and it's total chaos because nobody ever planned for an outage or for a ransomware event or for anything else like that. You conduct fire drills monthly with your organization, but nobody does cyber exercises. And if you need help with that, just get a hold of Steve or myself. Have a call tree for the FBI, the local police department. I would prefer me as well, because I can get you resources. And then, like I said, have those pre-planned responses to limit the impact. You know, even if all you do is disconnect from the World Wide Web at your internet provider, that's going to stop a lot of this malware from being able to be downloaded and migrated through your network. But we can discuss those on some more focused visits by myself. Again, back up your data, use multi-factor authentication, again, which is something you have and something you know. Please patch and update all of your software and hardware. There's nothing worse than, that's one of the top 10 vulnerabilities on the FBI and CISA's list this year, is most of these ransomware attacks and whatnot, most of these hacks are from outdated software and hardware. It creates too much pain for everybody. Lastly, do a business impact analysis. If you need help with that, I can talk through that. I can come out and do it with you. And that will help you determine what is important to your organization. And it will help define that restoration process of the most important thing to get restored first to the least important. Finally, these are some free resources that DHS offers at no cost. We can scan all of your public-facing IP addresses. That's your websites, your email servers, things like that. Anything that the public can get to, and we can see, we can scan that, and we'll give you a list of vulnerabilities for you to mitigate. We can do a phishing campaign with your organization and then give you weekly reports as to what level of difficulty was the email and who on your staff clicked on it, so that you can go have those nice conversations with them. We can also conduct remote penetration tests. It's basically using our ethical hackers to hack into your network. And as we do that, you'll get a nice report of this is how we bypassed your security, and this is some resources to consider to improve your cyber posture. Lastly, this is what I would do. I would come out, we have what's known as a cyber resiliency review. We would sit down, have a discussion all day. It covers 10 domains. It's interview based. It's not an audit. I'm not a regulator. I'm not going to call the police. I'm not going to have you arrested. I'm not going to fine you. It's simple questions. We're going to ask you a question, and yes, you do this, no, you don't, or it's incomplete. And then at the end, you get about 140-page reference guide with options to consider. And the reason I say 140-page is because we reference every question we ask directly. External dependencies from a cyber perspective. What are your dependencies, both upstream and downstream? So if one of your suppliers has an issue, what's its impact to you? And if you're the supplier of a service, what's going to be the impact to them if you have that bad cyber incident? Lastly, we look at the infrastructure survey, which is how you kind of do your day-to-day, monthly, weekly operations of your network. And when we look at those critical services from your business impact analysis, we're going to map out service by service. So if your service is, water generation or water distribution, okay, what servers are needed? What software is needed? What facilities are required to distribute that water? And who are the people and the data that you need to operate those systems? And we focus in on that so you can focus your mitigation efforts to protect that most critical service to yourself. And we are getting real close. If on the next slide, you can get my email. And I'm happy to send these out to you, but these are the questions I'd like for you to go back and have those conversations with your organization. Again, how do you measure it? Who's accountable for it? A whole lot of people like to cross their hands. It's what I call the scarecrow salute. Nobody's accountable when the bad day happens. Have you determined what's at risk? What are your consequences? And what's a incident management plan look like? And finally, again, this would all be part of a handout I can send out to you. We have 24/7 folks sitting in DC that can respond to your needs, whether it's a question, whether it's an incident, etc. FBI has a really good resource. It's their ic3.gov. You can call them to report an incident. They have folks that you can talk to on the phone. There's another entity called the Multi-State ISAC, which is the Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They also run 24/7. They have a bunch of those baseline configurations available for you when we went back to a standardized desktop, laptop type thing. A lot of these resources, I'm rifling through to keep us on time, but I'd be happy to discuss this more with you. Take a screenshot or whatever you need of my email. And I see some people coming in, and Sam, did you just want me to shoot you an email? Is what I'm reading. I will get a hold of you here in a second. I'm gonna, as soon as I give this back, and then we can discuss it. But this is how to get a hold of me. If you have any other questions about any of the other CISA options, or you need to talk to the protective security advisors, I will absolutely get you in touch with them. I'll get you in touch with our headquarters staff, whether it's for training events, cyber events, exercises, things like that. Whether you have a question about the CFATS programs, we have a ton of stuff out there that people just aren't aware of. And for Steve's sake, this is my pitch. If you're really interested and you're not part of one of our mailing groups, CISA and FEMA have been holding a town hall every Wednesday at 11 a.m. for 1 hour. We bring up different topics from personal protective equipment to cyber things to protective services, all of these issues that are impacting our lives in the current health environment. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over. I'm going to get a hold of Sam here in a second. And if you got any other questions, shoot them directly to me or put them up on the chat channel and they'll get them to me. But I appreciate it. I hope you all have a great weekend once this rain blows through the Kansas City area. And let me know. Thank you.
All right. Well, I got control back. I'd like to thank Steve, Dala, and Jeff for the presentation. I would also like to thank Rick Goins, who put this all together from DHS. I think it was a really good presentation. I don't know what just happened with my screen, but I appreciate everyone for attending today. And, are there any questions? I don't have my chat up, so I'm not sure if anyone's chatting.
No, I think we're good, Rick.
Well, with that, I'd like to close the meeting, and I wish everyone stay safe, stay secure, and we'll see you next month.